Audio is good. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. Hello. I hope everyone is staying cool. I'm not sure how it is over there in the Carolinas, but it is pretty sweltering here in DC.
Yeah, I was talking to my mom earlier today, and she's like, "Oh, it's so hot in New Jersey." I'm like, "It's about the same here as what we used to. Like last year in the summer, we had more than 10 days straight of over 95-degree weather, and that hasn't happened here yet. So
Yeah.
this feels like a pretty normal summer here."
Yeah, well, DC is just a disgusting swamp town, anyways.
DC's
So
disgusting even when it's not hot because it's a swamp town.
it's a swamp town, right? So it's typically pretty disgusting. And then once the temperature goes up, oh
Yeah.
man, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been pretty bad, and I'm really tired just because yesterday and today was Pokemon Go Fest, so I've been playing Pokemon Go Fest
Oh, that's what
in my
you've been
car.
doing. I thought you
Yes,
were
that's where I've
working.
been.
I thought you had so much work.
Well, no, I do, and then I made sure to do it all. So these 2 days I can play Pokemon Go Fest, of course.
Priorities.
Priorities. And of course, unlike other Pokemon Go Fest where everyone congregates into a city and plays together, this one, Niantic did it so that everyone can play separately. It's like Pokemon Go Fest where you are, and I just drove around in my car, uh, you know, keeping proper social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
that's what.
and iron, aluminum, whatever the hell cars are made of, frames.
Yeah, exactly. So,
God, I
uh,
just realized I don't know what cars are made of.
oh my god.
I
Well,
should, but I don't. I've owned a number of cars by this point in my life.
they have a lot of materials in them. It's okay.
Okay.
It's not really necessary for this podcast, thankfully. So, uh, let's talk about the expansion because we definitely have some news regarding the expansion. We have new cars that have come out, and you know what I learned this week that was really interesting? Your buddy, Alec Dawson, was
Uh-huh.
actually the lead on this expansion. I
That's why
learned it
it's so
from.
freaking crazy.
It's you know what? Because I looked at it and uh, look, no matter how it sort of shapes the meta in terms of maybe it will be known as a quote healthy meta, maybe it'll be known as a quote unhealthy meta. The thing that stands out most about the set, though, is just how creative it is
Mm-hmm.
and how there's been so many cards revealed already from the upcoming expansion, which I look at it and the flavor just fits with the function.
Yeah.
It like if a card is like doing sort of like X thing, the character that's trying to portray it just makes sense, and then it just adds to the flavor of Hearthstone. And so not only do you have all these kind of cool new mechanics and all these cool new dual class cards. By the way, you can tell that the dual class cards they put a lot of thought into them because
Mm-hmm.
some of the dual class mechanics, I'm like, oh, it's like you identify this
Yeah.
one thing that they both have in common, and it's not all like really just like oh, both of these guys have weapons, so let's do this. Some are just really interesting. So props to Alec for being the lead on this because I think this is definitely the most creative set we've ever seen from Hearthstone.
Yeah. And I'm not surprised that like after because the entire time I didn't know he was the lead on this. So Alec Dawson, by the way, who was the podcast host of the Golden Wisp, and then went to work for Blizzard as part of the design team. So one, if this turns out to be crap in terms of the arena, that's not his fault because he's the lead creative. So he's designing the cards to be like fun and interesting. He's not balancing stuff. But he's like just I've heard of the process they had to go through to like get hired by Blizzard, and just who he is like as a person is it's not surprising to me at all that this is one of the most thematically cohesive sets that also pushes the boundaries mechanically. Like it's gonna be interesting. Already, like I don't know what any of the sounds and things are, but one thing that I've been having, one of my criticisms of Hearthstone's creative direction for the last, I don't know, couple years, um, and it's a small criticism because I don't care too much about the creative side. That's you know me. I'm all about trying to figure out ways to win and the mechanics. But there's been like just less good voice line, you know, like there's been
Yeah.
less like humans and orcs and people who can use English, and more dragons and grunting and stuff like that.
Well, they did do a dragon themed one, and I don't think the consideration for whether or not we're using human voices was number one. I think people are just like, oh, dragons are cool, so I don't really blame them for that. But I understand you're just saying that like, well, I want to have like more cool voices.
Yeah, like the raider guy that comes out, the 5 mana 5/8 taunt that becomes a one attack afterwards. It's like it's a
Rush,
lovely day, right? Like that's one of the
what a
iconic.
what a lovely
What a
day.
lovely day. Okay, whatever. I see. I don't even need to know what the voice line is, but like it
Well,
creates.
wait, do you know what that's a reference to?
No, was it a reference to?
Really, I thought you were gonna say it was cool because it was a reference. It's a Mad Max reference.
Oh, I don't know
Did you
anything
ever
about
see
Mad
Mad
Max.
Max?
No,
Oh,
that makes sense though, considering what the what the art and what
right.
the card is.
It's the. I mean, if you look at it, that's like a contraption from Mad Max, right?
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, like that's something that whenever I play it, like I feel that, it's like take candle, like you don't have those anymore in the new sets. Like where it's not like I wanted to memorize take candle, or that even I played Geomancer all that much because it's a crap card, even like way back when, like it was never even an okay card. But you just play it a couple times and just get stuck in your head, and that's gone. And one thing that Sholomance Academy I'm really hoping for, because there's a lot of people that talk and the whole set feels very creative right now, I'm really hoping they get the voice lines down, like, and they give these like students and teachers and whatever good voice lines. I see. I'm looking at chat right now. How long can this go on? Yeah, you don't see those anymore. How long can this go on? Was 2.5 years ago.
It does seem like forever. Seems like a
So
long time.
yeah, like as the cards get released, I'm excited about the creative direction. And it fits. It's very nice, campy, Hearthstone-y thing, right? To go to Hogwarts.
Definitely fits.
All right. So in terms of the release schedule for Sholomance Academy, we're on the Lightforge podcast, we're not going to go over card by card. I think normally we go over a little bit more, but we're only going to do one card. Each of us has brought one card to the table that we want to talk about from the cards that have been spoiled so far. And the rest we're all going to talk about in the normal 6-8 hour long card review stream. Now, the card review stream is normally on a Sunday. It would normally be next Sunday. But they decided to release Sholomance Academy on a Thursday and not a Tuesday. So the release date of Sholomance Academy is on August 6th, a Thursday, which means we will be doing our big card review stream on Tuesday night, August 4th. And on August 2nd, the normal Sunday, that will just be like a regular like stream, probably Battlegrounds that I'll do. And give Merps the day off. And on the 3rd, the Monday, where we normally have a streaming day, as we normally do, we cancel the stream right before the card review stream so we can prepare for that. So the schedule going forward is it's a normal week, and then next Sunday, instead of Lightforge and Coop, there's just a normal ADWCTA Battleground stream, and then Monday's canceled, and then Tuesday we do the card review stream, the normal big 6-8 hour, however long. We're hoping to not drag it to 2 a.m., but who knows. And then on Thursday, when we normally don't stream, that's when they're launching. So Merps is going to do a Thursday night stream, and I'll probably join in at some point in the stream as well to check it out. And then I'll be streaming Friday night and Saturday night, and Merps will join in there, maybe, depending on how dead he is. And then on Sunday, we'll do the first Lightforge or the first Coop of Sholomance Academy. So that's the schedule going forward, so you guys know. And if you're just like waiting and wondering what all the cards are, the card dump should happen on Wednesday, which is in like 3 days from now. So we should have all the cards quite soon, and we'll actually have less time overall to prepare for this set, but more time from the point of the card dump to the point of release. It's 2 extra days. So
That's always appreciated.
yeah, especially because this set is so weird. Like, there's so many mechanics that we look at, because there's a lot of times you have a mechanic and you're like, oh, you just take this mechanic that we've done before, put it on this body, or give it to this class, or have a different mana cost, or do it 3 times instead of once. Just simple stuff. But this one, I'm looking at everything so far. Now, to be fair, most of it has been epic and legendary, but every single one needs custom code. Like, every single one, I'm like discussing with ZD Man, and I'm like, okay, so we do this, and then we do this, and in these cases we do that, and in these cases we do this. And that's going to take a lot of time to like figure out, and then to troubleshoot if things go wrong. But it's a weird set.
Definitely. All right. So, it's gonna be weird not doing our big stream on Sundays because we've done them on Sundays for a long time.
Yeah.
Maybe this will be the kick in the butt that we need to actually do them a little bit faster by doing it on a Tuesday. Change things up a little bit.
It's coronavirus time. I roll out of bed in my robe and take my laptop, which is sitting by my bedside, and start working. So I got all the time in the world at night.
All the time. All right. So, like ADWCTA says, we're not going to talk about all the cards because we're going to talk about them during the actual card review stream. But we do want to talk about the cards a little tiny bit and pick 2 of the cards that we think are interesting, whether they will impact the arena meta or we just think that they're kind of cool. So which one are you talking about?
Okay, so the card I picked is my favorite card that I've seen so far in Sholomance Academy. It is Glide. Glide, and I like it because, and I'm not gonna, I'll talk about some other things maybe as well, very briefly. But I like the card. It's a Demon Hunter rare card. And I like it because it's not even alone. There are other cards now that do this in Demon Hunter. It's just like a new mechanic that Demon Hunter has. So Glide is 4 mana. Shuffle your hand into your deck. Draw 4 cards. Outcast. Your opponent does the same. So not only is this potentially like a nourish type kind of draw, right? If you have 2 cards in your hand, for example, what you play Glide, and potentially even just a sprint if this is your last card. But if it's Outcast, and it'll probably be Outcast, like honestly, it'll probably be Outcast because you're not playing like card draw cards until the end usually. Your opponent does the same, meaning whatever your opponent's been holding on to, all those Dragon Queen Alexstrasas and Twin Tyrants and all the bullshit, and I'm speaking about this from an arena perspective. In Constructed, it's even more devastating, I'm sure.
Well, in Arena, there's a question of, because I've been sort of keeping track of the discussion of this in Constructed.
Mm-hmm.
No one is doubting the disruptive potential because, all right, so Hearthstone, it's not MTG, in which MTG has tons of disruption.
Yeah.
You can actually there are cards that kind of just stop your opponents from instantly doing what they want to do, or immediately mess with their hand.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that you haven't really done in Hearthstone. You have stuff like, for example, Chaos Gazer, right? But you don't have cards like Glide. So, and I've been following the sort of discussion Constructed, and some people are like, well, this is really good. It's going to change the meta. And some people are just like, well, okay, if we're looking at Tempo Demon Hunter right now, this doesn't even fit in there, really. Right. It's like the best way to disrupt control is to actually just kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the best way to disrupt, right? It's like, and we talked about it before in, there are some cards that I think some people might think, oh man, this is really good in aggro.
But this is not like an aggro card necessarily. Usually, like card disruption is in a control deck.
Well, this is why it's still a discussion, mm-hmm. right? Like there are some very, very good players who say, it won't have any applicability. There are also some good players that say, okay, point taken, but I think we will see play, and they're predicting shifts in the meta, and because of that, this will be applicable. But it is just interesting because in Constructed, everyone sees the power of it, but right now no one knows exactly how
to fit it into the deck.
How good it's going to be, if it's going to be good at all, because it's so sort of like peer into the future. What are going to be the best 5 decks, right, that people are bringing to tournaments, and does this fit into a counter to those decks?
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
So in Arena, this is going to be amazing because it is a undercosted card draw at worst. And at best, it also disrupts your opponent's hand. And your opponents are probably holding on to larger things than they are holding on to smaller things. Whether the large things are like card draw cards themselves that are anti-tempo and they couldn't play, or there's stuff like mind control that they couldn't play. Also, your opponents are always going to be like, if you're just even with your opponent's going to be discarding more cards than you are, because this is only 4 mana. You get to play out parts of the rest of your hand before playing this. Your opponent doesn't. So even in like kind of a bad scenario where you and your opponents have equal card advantage, this card still like does not a great job, but certainly it's still like a arcane intellect for like 4 mana, right? Which is not terrible in a bad situation. Now, this card becomes less playable if you have way more card advantage than your opponent. But if you have way more card advantage, you don't really mind having 1 dead card in your hand. So,
Yeah.
in the cases where this card is potentially less than stellar, you don't really care. And in the cases where it's amazing, it's really amazing. So I think this card is going to be kind of an insane card in the arena.
So you think it's going to be insane? I think it's going to be good. I don't know how insane it's going to be. I will say, thinking back on my games in this meta, and whenever I am playing any aggressive / tempo class, like during the matchups in which I'm looking at my opponents, and they have just this inevitability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also they have so many options. That's really the thing. When you see them with like 8 cards in their hand, not only do you know that they have the long game, you're like, okay, the AoE is in there somewhere,
Yeah.
right? It's just in there. So I'm like, is this good? I'm like, yeah, it is. So I would say that yes, it is definitely good for this current meta right now, in which some classes are really like, it's like turn after turn because of all the card generation. They just never actually go down in cards,
Yeah.
right? They play a card to generate at least 1 card, so they're never like actually spending cards at all. So yeah, in this meta, it would be good. Like there are definitely situations in which it's awkward, but that's a lot of cards. A lot of cards are going to be awkward sometimes, whether completely unusable or just suboptimal.
Yeah, and imagine you put this in an aggro deck and your opponent's holding that heal because
Yeah.
they don't have to play the heal until they're actually threatened, and they shouldn't play the heal until they're actually threatened because it doesn't like give you tempo or anything. And then you glide and you refill your hand. They either lose some cards or it's about even, but they lose all the cards they've been holding for to prevent you from killing them. Like, there's so much stuff you can do with this. And I'm not saying that you can do it too smartly, but the percent chance of it being very disruptive to your opponents is pretty damn high, I think. Okay, so that's my favorite card revealed so far. So it's not even the only card like this. If you look at, there's now a legendary card, Star Student Stelina, that says Outcast. It's a 4 mana 4/3 Outcast. Look at 3 cards in your opponent's hand, shuffle one of them into your deck. That's like a straight up, pick a card from your opponent's hand and discard it, basically.
Yeah, it is.
Like, this stuff is entering Hearthstone. And this is the kind of stuff that I really wanted Priest to be doing before there was a Demon Hunter. And they had it in Priest. Like, this was a Priest mechanic, and it just felt so bad, was how Ben Bro described it. It just felt so bad that they had to get rid of it, like, to players. Like, players who were doing it would feel a little bit good, but players who had it done to them, whether card taken away or discarded, would feel terrible. And so they just didn't do this kind of disruption. But as you see, as Hearthstone matures, it's like in its 7th year, 8th year now, like these mechanics are starting to become more fair game as they imagine that the player base is more mature to be able to handle this kind of stuff. And it's not this is not super fancy or creative, right? This is just taking a very base common card like MTG black color concept and finally putting it into Hearthstone, where in its original design it was in there and they had to take it out.
Yeah, it's also like a tolerance thing, right? Like, if you had just printed this immediately after Classic, people are just like, what?"
Mm.
But it's like, okay, we've, it it's like we've introduced some RNG, and then a little bit more RNG, and then more tolerance for disruption as well. So it's like the RNG tolerance has gone up, and that's why you see stuff like Box of Yogg-Saron, and ways to cheat out Box of Yogg-Saron super early. I'm not saying people love it, but that
That's the
is
game
where we are
now.
at, right?
Mm.
Like this is not stuff that we were seeing during Blackrock Mountain and Next Ramus. Like, you had Zoo, which was good tempo for the cost, but you didn't have like turn 5 Box of Yogg-Sarons. So it just increases the tolerance. And then by necessity, it's like, well, where do we go from here? We got to go further, right? Well, we definitely have to go a little bit further than that. So it's interesting. And I do really like the flavor. I can't. I have to keep on saying this. That's something in which I know months from now, if the meta is bad, right? A lot of people are going to complain about it, but as a lead designer, and not a lot of like sort of what you see actually goes in the final design, right? A lot
Yeah.
of like the sort of tinker, but like the lead design, like Alec, what he does is like this is his vision, right? This is
Right.
his baby. Like this is so got to give him props for that. Like it's just super duper creative stuff, and I guess it goes to my card that I want to talk about. The card I want to talk about is actually Sphere of Sapience. I know we don't talk a lot about legendary. I wanted to talk about this because I just thought it was pretty cool. It is a legendary neutral weapon, the first neutral weapon that we have. I did not think we were going to see neutral weapons, but it's a 1 mana 0/4. And at the start of your turn, look at your top card. You can put it on the bottom and lose 1 durability. How good is this? It sucks. Okay, it sucks in Arena.
I'm
It
glad
sucks
you
in
got that
Arena.
out of the way.
Yeah, yeah. But once again, it's just they are breaking ground here, and not in a revolutionary way, right? They're not changing uh, like the foundational aspects of the game. But we have neutral weapon. We have this like universal kind of scrying effect, and that's pretty cool because these are things that Hearthstone has been very reluctant to do. Number one, have neutral weapons. Number
Mm.
two, give every class this ability, even though it's a very slow one, right? Like you can tell they're being very careful because it is a very very slow ability. But I just think it is pretty cool that they're introducing this, and I could have talked about something that is much more meta relevant, like Penflinger, which is 1,000 bazillion times more relevant than Sphere of Sapience. But I want to talk about Sphere of Sapience because it's really cool.
It is, and you know how we had legendary weapons before in all the classes. Now we have a neutral legendary weapon. I think the next step is that all classes should just get normal weapons. Like it never made sense to me why other classes don't have weapons, right? Like the Sphere of Sapiens, it's a sphere. It's not even like an axe or anything, right? It's just like an artifact. Like there's a spot on the board, and it just feels so empty for all the classes that don't use weapons.
Yeah.
All right. So those are the two cards we wanted to talk about. And we'll talk about all the rest of the cards and those two cards again next Thursday. Sorry, next Tuesday. So tune in for that. And if you don't tune into us live, it'll be out on YouTube and in podcast form on Wednesday morning. And remember, release is Thursday. Okay, so let's take Sholomance Academy and set that off to the side. We will have plenty of content about that next week. Let's take a brief moment and talk about the arena. I played a few arena runs quite a few arena runs actually, since the last Lightforge podcast, because that was on a Friday and the meta kind of just hit for a couple days. So initially, it felt like the meta was more tame than it was before. And then I played it some more, and I realized I have been fooled. The meta was not more tame than it was before. It was just different broken cards are being seen now than the broken cards that I had been trained to be like, oh no, here's another one of these broken cards. So you now see 4 times as many embiggens as you did before in the meta.
Yeah. These are not micro adjusts, all right? Let's ban the use of that word, micro adjust. It's a word that Blizzard threw at us, which is just so incorrect now.
Okay, so part of that is because people are playing more Druid. So it's not like Blizzard tuned it up by 4 times, but they maybe like doubled it, right?
Right. But like for example, rogues are number 1 right now, you know, and a lot of that has to do with like how many cursed vagrants and evil miscreants they have,
evil
right?
Freaking miscreants again.
So many evil miscreants.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and that's not just like, oh, you know, like once in a blue moon you'll get a little bit more evil miscreant. No. Evil miscreants everywhere. They're there, just everywhere. You face a rogue, yeah, it's gonna be a lot of evil miscreants and a ton of lackeys.
Yeah.
So
rogue being number 1 in the meta is not particularly good. It's not the worst, but it's not a fun time because rogues are pretty random.
Yeah, this is the problem with rogues. And look, whenever you have the beginning of a meta, rogues are typically pretty good because of the dagger. But rogues being good because of the dagger and because of their tempo is more bearable.
Yeah.
You know, it's more bearable than rogues winning because of lackey generation and thief effects in which they, you know, like let's say from a feral cat they get a really good reborn minion, or from a mugger they get something really good from another class, and you just can't account for these. Like there's no way you can account for these. So rogues winning in this way, it just feels worse because you're like, okay, if I lose to backstab and defies and eviscerates and all those things I lost to rogues in previous metas, well, you know, I know that rogues are capable of this. If rogue just plays some random busted like warlock or druid minion, you're just like, what? Like, okay, like that wasn't even in the same universe of or in my thought process. So that kind of sucks.
Yeah. And they're at 45.5%, which is not the most amazing thing, but still, it's pretty. So the spread right now is between Rogue at 45.5% and Demon Hunter at 45.7%. It's a lot better than the spread was before the offering odds adjustment, but it is still significantly larger of a gap than, let's say, at the end of Descent of Dragons and how the micro adjust left things there. And it is like for a final micro adjust, it's a little wide still. And that's because at some point they just stopped micro adjusting for 2 months, and then they're like, oh hey, by the way, here's a micro adjust. We push the button. So this should have been the adjust that happened like 6 weeks ago, and then there should have been another adjust like 2 weeks ago that actually made it, you know, the even meta that Blizzard is fully capable of doing by pushing the button repeatedly.
Push the button.
Push the button more frequently. Okay, so rogues being at the top, no one really likes. Druid being on the top, people generally don't mind because Druid is a pretty like kind of normal class. So when they get good, all their stuff gets good. Then the problem, as I brought up before, is like they literally lost to Embiggen 3 times in one run. Like those were my 3 losses. I got Embiggen 3 times. And then I beat someone who played Embiggen way too late. Like, those are 4 of my matches in a particular run. Now, that was obviously on the high side, but still, this is an epic card. It should not be seen anywhere that frequently, even though it is an auto pick. And also, we all know Druids have those, like, big giant bombs that are just, like, large, beefy minions with card advantage. So, in a Druid draft, the more of those you get, the better your deck is. And there's not that many other Druid cards that compete with those cards. For how good they are. So Druids are in I wouldn't say they're terrible for the meta outside of Embiggen, but still potentially problematic. Warlocks are number 3, and they're probably as normal as you're going to see in terms of like not too tilting. They have some combos, but they normally do what you would expect Warlocks to do with the addition of dormant scrap imps added to the mix, which is not like that's not the most tilting thing.
No.
Because they're dormant and it's a warlock, and warlocks do not like to not do stuff because they get hit in the face a lot. So
Right. I think a lot of people are unhappy about, for example, look, when they lose due to scrap imp and then removal, and then they play big minions. You lost more so because of the removals,
yeah,
like because what was more of a key to your loss? It was because they had the removals, right? They had the hellfires, they had the shadow bolts, they had the rain of fires and everything to back it up. And yes, Scrap Imp contributed to it, but it was really just the fact that they had all those removals that like screwed you over.
yep. And meanwhile, on the bottom, you have Warrior and Demon Hunter, basically the same at both around 46%, bringing up the rear. 46% is playable. And in the case of Demon Hunters, I'm pretty sure people are not playing it particularly well because they just don't have a lot of experience in it. So this is a decent time to play some Demon Hunter if you're in the arena. You want to bridge the gap until Sholomance Academy comes out. Because when Sholomance Academy comes out, I don't know. I don't think Demon Hunter is going to be 10th anymore. And so you might as well get some reps in and actually learn how to use the class, especially with their new nerfed cards, right? So yeah, that's kind of where Arena is right now. In the big picture, everything's like changed 10%, and so the net effect is about 10%. I thought all the 10% changes may add up to something more than 10%, but it doesn't. It's just 10%. Like, the meta's probably 10% less swingy than it was before, which is great, but that's still pretty swingy. Curve is about 10% more important, which is great, but that's still not too important compared to some of the metas we're used to. It's now no longer like, I think you do feel it a little, like especially if you end up without a curve, you're like, oh no, what am I doing? Because a lot of the ways that you can actually punish rogue and warlock and druids who use embiggen is to have a really good curve. So a lot of these things that you're going to see, you really want to have this aggressive plan available to you in case you see like rogues or druids or warlocks doing their thing. And if you don't have a curve, you're pretty dead in the water. So there is an additional bump that I would give to drafting my curve and making sure that it exists, and not just curve but also reach. Reach was always important even in the previous meta. That's why warriors were so good, even like better than other classes that got ridiculous bumps to their best cards, because warriors always had a secondary game plan that they can change weapons to go face. And it's still important in this meta compared to the previous one because rogues and warlocks are on top. And rogues and warlocks lose their hero power when you go face. And druids sort of lose their hero power when you go face too. So those are your top three classes. You want to be able to go face. And you want to be able to finish them off before they heal.
There's so many comeback mechanics. There's so many ways that opponents can swing the game back. So you definitely want to limit their options, limit the amount of just, what might seemingly be ridiculous, but not in these days, sort of ridiculous things that they can do to you to steal the game away from you. So the ability to go face is really, really important.
Yeah, so it's also because if you look at Rogue, right, and Druid and Warlock, the way that they have their powers stacked right now, it's all card advantage, right? Rogues with Miscreants, what is Miscreant? Ridiculous card advantage. Not really that much tempo, but ridiculous card advantage. Druids with Embiggen, right? Ridiculous, card advantage, just eventuality, they're going to win. All those big things. Warlocks just are always card advantage. They have that hero power. And scrap imps literally increase that card advantage even more, right? When they have minions. So if you have your three dominant classes that are all really good at card advantage and competing with each other, you can jump in on that game, but it'll be good for you to have another plan. That being said, do not be actual aggro. I don't know, maybe it works for some classes. I haven't tested anywhere near all the classes, but I tested an aggro run and it did really, 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 really poorly. Because, like Merp said, there's so many comebacks, there's so many large taunts, right? The large taunts have not gone away. There's so many, like, all this other whatever stuff. And you need to have some reach, you need to have a curve, but stay in that mid range zone. Like, if you're trying to push it into actual aggro deck, the way we normally think of an aggro deck, it's gonna fall apart a lot. Like, at least just I didn't have any success with it. Like, maybe it works with Demon Hunter, I don't know. But it would be very, very class specific.
Yeah.
If it does work.
Yeah, I haven't tried it either. I'm not sure. I mean, from the way that the game has just been trending, it's hard for me to think that like true aggro is ever a great idea because true aggro involves you giving up a lot in the draft.
Yeah.
Actually, like you need to sacrifice a ton, and what you get back has to be worth it. And the meta right now is fairly rough. Like what you're doing is you're giving up a little bit too much value, and what you're getting back is not great. Like the bucket system was so much better for
Mm-hmm.
aggro. Like there was a reason that whenever I made my guide and whenever I did all of this stuff, it was during the bucket system. Like I still go down in value, but I'm not completely tanking
Yeah.
my value in order to do it. So that's really the thing. It's like you can talk about all this meta stuff as well, and it's very applicable. But like I was helped out, when I made my guide and when I was singing the praise of Hunter. Like the Hunter was really helped out by buckets. That was like the big contributing factor.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you don't have buckets, it's like the meta has to be so like the cards have to be so homogenous in value
Yeah.
in order for aggro to like really shine through. Otherwise, it's
Because
tough.
otherwise, what you're doing is you have to pick a raptor when it gets offered instead of a twin tyrant.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta make up a lot of ground if you're making those picks.
And if you, because here's the thing, it's all relative. If you think, well, that's fine for me, okay, but someone else is picking the tyrant, and then they are able to extract that value, and then they have the tyrant, they have the hellfire, they have all of the stuff. So at a certain point, cohesion just can't beat pure value. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can be very cohesive, but that deck is also going to be fairly cohesive and just so much better than yours. So
Yeah.
that's always the rough part.
All right. So that's arena, and we're gonna leave it there. I really wish we had more time in this meta to like really dig in, but it's a very short meta. The expansion is about to come out and kind of turn everything on its head, and we will be playing arena for that whole first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the whole first 6 days of after the arena launch to really like dig in as we normally do. So check out the Twitch streams, and hopefully we'll get some 12 wins and those will go up on YouTube as well. I know we've been missing some arena content on our YouTube as we focus more on battlegrounds in the late expansion setting. I think this will probably become a pattern where as we get farther and farther along, especially if they don't do rotations, as we get farther and farther along from the launch of an expansion, that we shift more and more back into battlegrounds. So this happened in the course of the last week. I brought my MMR up from about 10K to like 11.7K.
I know it's the rise of ADWCTA 2020. Things are strange, but none can be stranger, I think, than ADWCTA ascending into the leaderboards. That was
It's
that was quite a run you had there. That
yeah,
was very impressive.
it's
Very, very
it's
impressive.
official. I'm top 200 battlegrounds leaderboard, and since I hit there on Tuesday, I've dropped out. I've come back. I've dropped out again. I've come back. I've dropped out again. I've come back. So I feel like I can say that it wasn't like a fluky. Oh, I high rolled like 5 games in a row to like burst my way up there, and I can't like hold my ground down there. Like I'm a low top 200s, whatever borderline kind of player right now, based on this meta and my skill. So one thing that really helped, like seriously, is they took Hook Tusk and they nerfed Hook Tusk because Hook Tusk was not good for me. I had a losing record with Hook Tusk. There was way too much
How could you lose
clicking.
Hook Tusk?
Okay, so I actually made an APM tier list. I haven't like sent it, but I have it internally. That's how much actions per turn on average each hero adds to you. And some heroes reduce your actions per turn, like Eudora, for example, because it takes 1 mana every turn and it doesn't give you more stuff to do at the same rate. Eudora actually reduces your actions per turn. Jaraxxus does as well. That's also why I really like those two heroes. But most heroes increase your actions but per turn by less than 0.5, if at all. There's maybe like 10 that increase it by more than 0.5. And of those that increase by more than 0.5, Old Hooktusk was in a league by itself at like 4. Because it's a free ability. You have to figure out where you're targeting. You have to then make a discover decision. Then you have to play that card and then possibly dispose of it or whatever. And then because you got an extra minion from doing that, right? Like there's just so much stuff that goes on. Right? It was not working for me. But anyway, with Hooktusk gone and Eudora still in place, I've managed to hit top 200. I feel like I've gotten better. I'm starting to play classes like Millhouse now. I spent yesterday learning Millhouse because he's decent on win rates, and I just always avoided him because I had no idea how to play him. But now I feel pretty good
We
about
had
it.
this discussion months ago. I was like, not high on Millhouse. I was like, no, he's fine. And you were like, you didn't exactly disagree. You're just like, I don't want to play him. I just
Yeah.
like don't want to play him. I
I
don't
also
want
thought
to.
after the nerf he would be below average, but he's above average.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that was surprising to me.
Yeah, he's one of those heroes that look, obviously he became a lot better after Pirates came out, right? Pirates
Yeah.
was so good for him. Because of Swabby and because of the tier 233 that
Yeah.
sells for 3 gold. I mean, that is just like sometimes finding extra gold is really good, right? In a game of inches, getting a little bit more in the early game or the mid game is really,
Yeah.
really good.
Now note that he's not actually good going pirate, but those two
No,
pirate cards are so good for him.
yeah. So like just the fact that pirates are in is really good. And I will say, what you typically want to do is you want to pick Millhouse when both pirates and dragons are in, because you want to go dragons for your final comp, but pirates definitely help you out. Pirates can help you get there.
Mm.
It's not a terrible thing. Like I'm not gonna say if those two tribes aren't in, don't pick them. He's still decent, but if pirates and dragons are both in, it's it definitely makes them a lot better.
Yeah. Yep. Um, so yeah. I'm trying to think of anything meta specific that I could say that goes with my improvement. By the way, if I'm a top 200s player, no one has any excuse. Like seriously, no one has any excuse. I did not think I would ever get to top 200. I still, it's not like I got that much better at finishing my turns. Like I still hang gold. Like I don't know, 1 out of every 6 turns or something. Just some shocking amount. And I stream, so this is all recorded and live. I don't position, because of rope a lot of times, and sometimes I just don't know how to position. Like the amount of stuff that I can't do that I am aware of that I can't do is so big that to think that there's only something like less than 200 accounts on NA that's performing better than my account is crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, both you and Dreads recently have made the leaderboards. I'm not sure if he is still on there. I know he's also been jumping on and off,
Mhm.
but it just goes to show Boomer APM
Yeah,
doesn't hold
it's
back.
not as big of a penalty as you might think. I guess. I mean, look, it's not like I'm ever going to be like a top 10 player or a top 20 player or whatever. But
Well, that's purely time. As of right now, that is purely time.
oh yeah,
Uh, yeah, yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, you playing, let's say you were, uh, even by a significant margin, the best BG player in the world. All right,
hmm
let's pretend, or maybe we don't even have to pretend. Maybe it's just true and we don't even know it. Um, at the rate that you are playing per day slash per week, you will never ever get there.
That's fair. I average something like a little over an hour a day.
Oh shit. Oh, you will definitely never ever.
I hit top 200 at 317 total hours from like November to here.
Yeah, no, I was even saying at your current sort of
Oh, the increased pace.
the increase rate. No. Like and I think some people get like kind of spoiled by seeing, for example, Victor or Wobble, and they're like, oh, they do it in like the span, or they take a new account and they go to like 12K in the span of, let's say, 2 weeks or something, right? Um, they're spamming it nonstop. It's like nonstop. It's I mean, it's literally their job, right? And of course, they're also very, very good at it. And then they're able to get to where they are. But for someone like you who can only play like an hour, maybe 2 hours a day, you'll just never get there because it's like inflation as well, right? It's like you are
the
fighting
top
against
200
inflation.
inflates at almost 10 points a day.
Yeah.
Okay. The heroes that I use, I think, is slightly different than what I see other people do. Like, I'm looking at my stats. The hero that I use a lot and I have a much higher than average win rate for I mean, it's all the heroes that you would expect. It's the heroes that don't do stuff, so I don't have to worry about them. Like, Deathwing is my best hero after Eudora, and that's because his hero power is just there. I don't have to worry about it. I average third with Deathwing at a sample size of 11, which is pretty good, I think. Normally it's 4.2 or something for top 1% players. And it's like I don't do anything fancy. Like, I do the least fancy thing. My whole strategy and philosophy is just always do the least fancy thing possible, because that takes less APM. I don't have to worry about it as much. Because if I try to do fancy things, I'm going to mess up. And whatever percent chance of me messing up is going to make whatever small benefit that fancy play has is going to kill that whole benefit. So with Deathwing, I just tempo until I get like a 6-drop that I can like a tier 6 minion that I can anchor my whole comp on. Or like when I get a tier 4 minion that I can anchor my comp on, like if going mechs or something, right? Like wherever I find an anchor, once I find an anchor, I switch my entire comp to go with that anchor, while maybe keeping a rat or a bronze like hanging out to like, stabilize my tempo while I make the transition. That's all I do. It's extremely straightforward and simple. But I'm guessing people don't play Deathwing that way, or I don't know. But it's quite like it's more than one position above global.
Do you pick Deathwing if there's no beast in the game?
Yes, I pick Deathwing always. If there's no Eudora, Deathwing is my second pick.
You can still go mechs. And it's fine. Mechs are pretty uncontested, so.
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to have mechs, beasts, or dragons. And I don't really care about my final comp. I do Deathwing with pirates. Like, it doesn't really matter what your final comp is. You just have to get to a final comp at some point. It's all about the path to the final comp. Because when I play Deathwing, I end up, like, by the time people are starting to get their comps together, it's like everybody has less than half their health and I have nearly full health. Right? Like, I have like 35 health or more. And they have like less than 20 health. So as long as I get a comp together and I can take those like 33%, which is like mitigate damage being done to me for a bit, I'm gonna do fine. I may not win, but I'm gonna do fine. I have one position above global for Yogg as well. Same philosophy. Just keep tempo in the early game and then figure something out later. I have +1 versus global for Eudora. Before today, where I had a disastrous 8th place Eudora game, I was actually averaging 1.8 for my average Eudora position. Like, which is insane.
Well, we all saw your Eudora Pirates game.
My God.
We are watching something else.
Eudora is just so good. Like, you don't have to do much to get it to high win rates. But yeah, Flurgle, I'm averaging 3.8 position on Flurgle.
I've heard a lot
5
of
games
stuff
with them.
about Flurgle. Yeah, like you've been telling me that you've been having a lot of success. I've heard it from quite a few top, high MMR players. that Flurgle has been good for them.
Because in the beginning, like there's not a scarcity of Murlocs in the very beginning because people like just pick whatever the tempo stuff is. But by the mid game, where there is a scarcity of Murlocs, you as Flurgle don't care about the scarcity anymore. Because you have a cycling, like your hero power is like doing its job now. So the whole thing where everyone's going Murlocs because Murlocs are powerful doesn't really affect you anywhere near as much as it affects everyone else trying to go Murlocs. Like you will always get a random Murloc. So, I mean, you're still going to be affected at how often you hit your brand. But Megasaurs are also not affected because no one keeps Megasaurs around. They like toss them back in the pool for you.
Right.
So it's Flurgle is really, really doing pretty well. I don't know. Everything else is pretty normal. I apparently suck with. I'm just looking at my stats. I apparently suck with Rafam and Caltheus. I don't know why I suck with Caltheus.
So you being bad with Kael'thas doesn't really make any sense because Kael'thas is, first of all, he should be sort of your character.
He should be. Right? I pick him 100% of the time.
Yeah, and also stats say he's good. Rafam, that's a lot more understandable because he's like definitely he requires a different skill set, and also he's just not like we're not in the meta in which he's king.
Yeah,
right.
His average win rates have plummeted, and I definitely pick him like very low. But it's sometimes hard to avoid him. Like if you get like Rafam versus like I don't know Patches, it's like I'm still gonna take Rafam, even though I do much better with Patches. I don't know. I have less than I have less than medium placement with Rafam over 9 games, which is shocking to me. I mean, it's not shocking. I think I suck with him, but it's like that shouldn't happen. When my average placement is 3.8, to have Rafam be at 4.9, like that's super low. But yeah. It's you just keep it simple. The one thing, the one hero that I play actually a lot of and do really well that no one plays is Patchwork. No one plays him probably because he's boring.
No one plays Patchwork. Well,
they don't even have stats for him because he's like so unplayed on HS Replay.
It's because he's boring. It's like, okay, there are some characters that are bad, but people will play them because they're interesting, whether they're new or they just have interesting hero powers. For example, like Tess, right? Stats say that she's really bad. Right now, is she bad?
She's not that bad. Like her stats have been going up as people figure out how to use her.
Right.
I think that was very interesting to watch.
Well, once again, like I'm using that as a comparison to Patchwork, right? Because it's like, okay, well, there's definitely there's definitely some good to Tessa. Just like I think we can all identify there's something good in Patchwork. Like that 10 extra health is fine. But why play Patchwork when you can play someone with an interesting new hero power?
Because he does better. Like my average placement with Patchwork is 3.2. That's insanely high. Like I should be picking Patchwork as like a right under the top tier kind of like hero.
Like you've always been high on Patchwork.
I have. I have always been high on Patchwork because you don't have to do anything. You have to do less than like Deathwing. You don't have to consider the hero power.
Nothing to be considered.
you just play, and you play tempo, and then you don't try to get I actually won a lobby with Patchwork, but that's what happens if you go tempo. Like you beat up so many people that they don't like get their comps together. The ones who are focused on getting their comps together die, and so you're just left with a bunch of other people who are like vaguely tempoing. So then you're just in this like match where it's like, oh, demons versus mechs versus menagerie. And you're like, all right, I got a decent shot at this lobby. I don't know. I think Patchwork is criminally underrated. Probably because people think he's boring and don't play him. But then because people think he's boring and don't play him, you never see any of like the really good players play him, which makes people think he sucks and it creates this cycle. And then there's no stats on him. The stats that exist from like top 20% players show Patchwork doing decently. Like he's like a solid 4.6 position hero. And yeah, I don't know.
It's just 11K players are not playing.
The 11K players never pick this guy.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm probably responsible for a way larger share of top 1 percentile picks of Patchwork than like it's actually probably like at least 1% of Patchwork games in this patch have been played by me in the top 1%. I would not be surprised if that was actually a stat.
Well, you know what? Time for you to play even more so we can actually get stats on it.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna finish this up with a deep fried meta. I really wanted to talk about this. I wrote an article on Bob's Tavern where this was one of the points.
So,
Um,
okay, so like here, when you reach 10K, you wrote an article. When you reach the leaderboard, you write an article. When you're number one NA in
oh.
2022, this is also after aliens invade us. Okay,
Hmm.
um, but I cannot wait to see that article. All
I'm
right,
gonna write a
'cause
book at that point. If I
you're gonna
get
write a
number one in a book is coming.
yes. I am looking forward to the novel.
Um, so the main point I want to highlight, and I think this is because I think most people are playing the game wrong. At least most people. Like I assume as a baseline that the game is defined by MMR, and that your goal is to get more and more MMR. I understand that's not everyone's goal. You may want to be cool. You may want to win your lobby, but for me, and the way Blizzard measures it, because they literally have a leaderboard that says these are the best players, and it's done by MMR, and they show the MMR. Like the official sanctioned measure of skill, the official goal of the game is to achieve more MMR for the competitive side. Okay, so with that out of the way, the best way to achieve MMR is not to win your lobby. Like, mathematically, and this is true in any kind of game that's set up this way with the MMR distribution system similar to this. It's not necessarily a Battleground specific thing, but that's also why most MMR systems are not set up the way Hearthstone's is set up right now. So you have equal gains from each position, right? Like 8th to 7th is the same as 1st to 2nd. But if you hit 1st, you are capped. You cannot go beyond 1st. You cannot earn more MMR. Your comp may be good. It'll have at least some percent chance of getting the one spot above 1st, right? In a theoretical model where you're not capped by this 8-player lobby. But you can't do it. And the first place MMR doesn't account for that. It's not like, oh, we account that if you get first place, you have some percent chance of going above it. So, instead of a 30-point jump between first and second, we'll give you a 60-point jump. Whereas all the other jumps are 30 points. Give like a little bonus for being first. That's what most MMR systems do. Without set up in this way. Because they recognize that if they don't do it the way Hearthstone's doesn't do it, you're penalizing getting first. It is very inefficient to get first. So assuming the linear risk-reward model exists in Battlegrounds, which I think it does, at least for the most part it does, way more so than the inefficiencies at the top would indicate, you would have to, like, your risk-reward would have to get 8th place, which is the floor, which you can't drop below 8th place, even though you may be really bad and you may lose even more MMR if this were an open system. You must get 8th place as often as you get 1st place in order for that kind of risk reward to be worth it, mathematically, for you to be pursuing 1st place. Now, if you're a good player, that's not going to happen. You won't climb like that if you get 8th place more often or as often as you get 1st place. So you're just putting in a lot of bad risk reward analysis if you're ever like trying to build comps or like doing any kind of significant sacrifices to try to make comps that can get to 1st place. Now, this doesn't mean that if Blizzard hands you a 1st place comp, that like, oh no, you messed up by getting 1st place. Like, obviously do the best that you can. I'm not saying like I'd rather get 2nd than 1st, but I'd rather try to get 2nd. I'd rather minimize, I want to get as high as possible in each lobby while minimizing the percent chance that I end up at 1st place. So ideally, I would have taken the correct amount of risk in each lobby to have a very high percent chance to get 2nd and a very low percent chance to get 1st. That would be absolutely ideal. It's a lot of randomness in Battlegrounds. You don't always get what you want. I don't always get 2nd place or even like a super good shot at 2nd place. But that's what you should be pursuing for. Whereas you talk to anybody and they're like, oh, Murlocs. Murlocs are terrible. They get 1st place so often. You don't want that. Now, if the game gives you a bunch of Murlocs, do it, right? Because then you're not taking as much risk. Like, if the game is like, oh, we're going to reduce risk for you and give you the reward of Murlocs, don't like take a gift, like shoot a gift horse in the mouth, right? Like, just go for it. But if all things being equal, and you can go Murlocs or you can go mechs, you should go mechs. On top of this, one of my secondary points is there's a pooled system. So if more people are going Murlocs, anything besides Murlocs is going to be better because you have more chances of tripling and more chance of hitting your units and all of that. But that's even a smaller point. At a fundamental level, like, just do not try to get first if it costs anything. If it is very little cost to get first, go for it, right? But all else being equal, try to do things that avoid first and otherwise get you the highest position possible, which is second. So if you're wondering like how I became a top 200 Battlegrounds player, I think just like fully understanding that element of my very big picture strategy is really the key. Because I'm definitely not like a better player than people who like can't make it to the top 200. I definitely don't play like that much more, if more at all. Like I think 300 hours is pretty low for making the top 200. So all I'm doing better than other people is correctly identifying what my goals actually should be. Whereas everyone else is like, I'm going to do my best to win the lobby because that gets me the most MMR. And that's not right. Now, do I think this is a good way to allocate MMR? No. But this is the way that Blizzard is allocating MMR. This is their game. And so I am playing their game. And Blizzard wants you to get second. That is the highest reward in Battlegrounds. Sorry, yes. The most efficient reward, not the highest reward. Obviously, first place gets you more MMR points.
So just to add on to what ADWCTA is saying, if you find yourself with a big lead early on, remember, get a snack. Maybe AFK for a turn, you know, like really, really shoot for that second place. No, I mean, here's the thing. I understand what you're saying, and I think it's good. I think it's good. The problem is like it's just really hard for people to kind of visualize this, right? And it's like, okay, how do I aim for second?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you talking about it, it is good. Like the philosophy is good because the best example you gave is just the fact that everyone's like, oh man, Murlocs win a lot. I should go Murlocs. And it's like, no. I mean, you can go Murlocs and you'll win sometimes. But if they're very contested and if the spread and it just doesn't work out for you, right? For you.
Yeah.
Once again, this is for you because everyone's spread is different. This is like if you were playing poker at the same table as everyone, but the rake was different for everyone. Right. This is actually pretty much like that situation, right? The rake is different. So what your risk tolerance and your betting structure and your sort of calculations are just different. Are they like super different? No, it's just like, you know, do you go all in with aces? Yes. But it affects things, and what you do on you know, from game to game, like with every hand, you have to play things a little bit differently, which is why I've always complained. I'm like, this is really weird because there's a reason why they don't change the rake in one single table game. That's just really dumb, right? But in BGs, you know, I understand why they do it, and I understand.
I mean, that's kind of a separate point about the swings that you're and the risk that you're willing to take. Like, and that affects like top players more. Like around, I mean, even at the top 200, I think I'm getting -15 on average penalty. For just like my rake is -15, whereas your rake is normally 0 if you're like below 9,000. Just to play the game, so that makes your risk reward tolerance like go up. But on average, it'll all even out. Like when the rate gets high enough and you get offered certain heroes, like sometimes you're just like, look, I'm okay if I just lose a little MMR, because on average I should expect to actually lose way more than MMR, because the game is not balanced on every hero. So that's a different consideration thing. But my whole thing with first is it's just like, if you think about it, it's really pretty basic math. There is a cap on the MMR you gain in the first place. All MMR gained for each position is equal. Ergo, it's least efficient to be in first place and most efficient to be in 8th place. But you don't really want to target 8th place for obvious reasons.
Very efficient.
Super efficient.
Let me tell you.
That safety net, you know, at the very bottom. But you don't want to do that, right? You still want to like do very well. But and it's like this is how the world works as well, right? Like you tax people more that make more money. Why? Because they can take it. Like and you give money to people at the very bottom. Why? Because otherwise it's really bad, right? Like what happens if you don't have eighth? If you could potentially drop 1,000 MMR from a bad game, people would quit this game, right? Now you think about that in a society in life. You don't want people quitting the game of society in life because at best they turn to crime at that point. At worst, it's even worse. So that's why society is set up like that. And just like in society, you have different incentives. Like I always, and this may be more like Asian parent inside me saying, but like you try to do as well as you can, but you don't necessarily have to be like literally the very top because there's inefficiencies there. So there's a good sweet spot that is the best for risk reward. Because who's at the very top, right? You have your rock stars, you have your like athletes, you have your I don't know, like very successful entrepreneurs and whatever. Um, but there's so much risk in that. The vast majority of the people who try to do that stuff don't go anywhere, and they actually fall significantly below your top tier. On the other hand, you have your second tier of like your normal like accountants, lawyers, doctors. Like they do quite well for themselves, but they're nothing special. Like they're probably not changing the world or like making multi-millions of dollars every year. They're not. You can easily identify people who are more successful than them. But you look at the Asian parent philosophy. No Asian parents really pushing you to be a rock star. Even though you can make a very good case that I will earn way more money and have way more other stuff, which is way more successful as a son if I were a rock star.
It's I mean, this is the reason why it's like if you are saying it's like, oh, I want to be like I don't know, I want to go into art, right? Or I want to
Mm-hmm.
go into music. It's like, okay, does Taylor Swift sort of impact the world and make $1 bazillion more than your average physician? Yes, like Taylor Swift runs the world,
Yeah,
right?
you would
But
rather be Taylor Swift than your doctor.
yes. I think that is yes. Or even if you don't like Taylor Swift, at the very least, she does make a butt ton of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but of course, it's like, well, for every Taylor Swift, how many people failed? And when they fail sometimes spectacularly so, right? And even the worst doctor is pretty cushy. Like
Mm-hmm.
is it and that's your that's your second place, right? You're just like, okay, I'm not even going for Taylor Swift
Yeah.
anymore. Like I'm not sitting there with my guitar writing songs. I'm just gonna grind it out and be a productive member of second place.
Yeah. And in life, you have an argument. You're like, oh, I only have one life to live. I'm going to take my shot, right? Frickin'
Right,
Hamilton
right.
giving bad life advice. But in Battleground, you just roll up another game. Like, you have so many shots to take. There's absolutely no reason for you to try to get first place. Like, except for kicks, right? Like, the reason to get first place in Battlegrounds is for non MMR reasons. It's for ego. It's for feeling like you won. It's to see what it's like to see first, on there instead of second. But not for MMR. For MMR, you want highest percent chance getting second with lowest percent chance getting first.
Yep.
All right. You have a question with the goat?
No, I am extraordinarily tired. I
Okay.
can tell people about my Pokemon Go Fest. I'm still like, so Pokemon Go Fest was yesterday and today. Uh, some of you guys might have been playing it, or well, I was gonna say are still playing it, but when you guys hear this, it'll be Monday. So I'm hoping that everyone just is able to kind of adjust to the situation that we are still in, unfortunately, and just kind of have a good time. And I will say that even though GoFest, which I have gone to twice in Chicago, was not able to actually be held in a physical location today, I thought Niantic made the most of it. And it ended up being a pretty fun event. It was pretty cool. and I just drove around in my car. I messaged a few of my friends, and like they put in functions of the game in which you can invite other people to raids. So you just play it like from a distance, right? You can invite people to do stuff with you, and it was pretty good. And I think this is what we're gonna be seeing a lot more often, just like gaming in general, but especially ways to connect people when we really just can't be connected right now. And don't be connected. Wear your mask. Stay away from people.
Listen to
And
podcasts instead of engaging in social interaction.
yep.
All right. This is a question from the Go brought to you by our patrons, our wonderful patrons at patreon.com. Thank you guys so much for your support. We're about to have a new expansion, and so you guys really help out at the Lightforge podcast and the tier list and everything else as well. We'll give shout outs, a lot of shout outs at the on our next podcast, which, remember, our next podcast will not be Sunday but will be Tuesday, so it will not go up onto podcasting forum things and like YouTube until Wednesday morning, if you're not with us live on Twitch. All right, until then, this is ADWCTA.
This is Merp. See you guys.